Hello everyone, back tuning to our latest Star Wars video. So we're going to be talking about Rian Johnson, the director of The Last Jedi, for today's Star Wars video, for our latest Star Wars video. So Rian has done an interview where he's basically said that he doesn't care if The Last Jedi is retconned by Episode 9. And this is causing a lot of comment within the Star Wars community. And within the YouTube Star Wars community as well. So I'm going to go over the article and what Rian has said very shortly. Just to say that if you are enjoying the Star Wars content on this channel, please like, share and subscribe. Let us know through the comments that you're enjoying what we're doing. And we're trying to build the channel back up. We want to get to 1,000 subscribers. It's slow old going. The channel's been dormant for like 5 years. So basically, I'm sort of starting the channel from scratch, really. And to be honest, I've forgotten just what an effort it is to get a channel going from scratch. But I'm going to persevere. We'll get there in the end. We will start to see these videos, hopefully, taking off a little bit over the next few weeks and months. So please like, share and subscribe. Let us know through the comments that you're enjoying what we're doing. Right, Rian Johnson, and that is a name that brings out the ire of a lot of Star Wars fans, I have to say, after what he did with The Last Jedi. But let's get on with this right now. So we're at the website io9.gizmodo.com. Going to leave a link to this website in the description of YouTube, of course. So the headline: Rian Johnson is okay with possibility of Star Wars Episode 9 retconning The Last Jedi. And of course, there is Rey in The Last Jedi, played by Daisy Ridley. Okay, so let's have a read of the article then. They're saying, how do we put this delicately? I think it's a rhetorical question. Some of the decisions Rian Johnson made in Star Wars Last Jedi rub people up the wrong way. The handling of Luke Skywalker, Rey's lineage, the fate of Snoke, all of these things instantly became lightning rods of debate and continue to be just that. Some fans even hope the sequel changes. Some fans even hope the sequel changes those things. They're talking about Episode 9. So that's a sequel, of course, to The Last Jedi. And if they do, Johnson is okay with it. While speaking to Johnson at CinemaCon 2019, MTV asked the writer and director of The Last Jedi if he'd be bothered if Star Wars Episode 9 co-writer and director J.J. Abrams retconned the revelation that Rey's parents were no one. Nobodies, of course. Johnson immediately shook his head and replied, like I said, man, I want to let go of all my expectations. I want to sit back. I want to be entertained. I want to be surprised. I want to be thrilled. I want him to do stuff I wasn't expecting him to do and just go along for the ride. That's a quote from Rian Johnson. In other words, no, he won't be bothered. He just wants to see something new and exciting, like he did himself by actually doing those things in the first place. In brackets, I've got, we love The Last Jedi, by the way, just to clear that up. And then it goes on. The interview, which you can watch below, also touched on other topics that are important to fans in franchise. So, no, as should be obvious from a previous quote, he does not know what's going to happen in Episode 9. Outside of a few brief meetings, he's out of the loop on the film. Yes, he is still working on his Star Wars movies. That's the trilogy, of course, that he supposedly is going to be creating in the next few years, but I've always had my doubts whether we would see that Rian Johnson trilogy, I have to say, but he's claiming that he's still working on it. Anyway, also there's no timeline as he's waiting to see, he's waiting on Lucasfilm to figure out their slate. So that all sounds rather patchy, really, with the trilogy. He's saying he's working on it, but there's no timeline from Lucasfilm or Disney about when this is actually going to be happening, when it will be made, or when the films will be released. He's waiting on them to figure it out. So it sounds, he's working on it, but it sounds like Lucasfilm and Disney have pushed it into the long grass, I must say. Do we hear something definitive in terms of when this thing is going to be made? I think we have to be a bit dubious about it. And he goes on, and yes, he's very excited to see what David Benioff and D.B. Weiss do with their movies. They're the Games of Thrones guys, of course, that are doing a trilogy possibly set around Knights of the Old Republic. And he says, which, like he said about Abrams' upcoming film, he hopes are surprising. Another quote from Rian Johnson. I'm also psyched about the things they are going to explore beyond what we've seen already. This is the Benioff and Weiss trilogy, I think. Johnson said, "To me, that's kind of the most exciting stuff, is pushing the limits of seeing stuff that we haven't seen before in Star Wars. You know, like he did with The Last Jedi." So what do we make of that? Well, as I say, in terms of Rian Johnson's trilogy, it all sounds very up in the air, if you will pardon the pun. That goes back to the Weather Channel, of course. So he's saying he's working on it. I've no reason to believe that he's lying. He probably is working on it. He's probably trying to generate story ideas and scripts, maybe a little bit of concept art, that kind of thing. But he also quite clearly states that there's no slate for this from Lucasfilm and Disney. So there's no date when production will officially start on this. There is no overall date for when the first of the trilogy will be released. So until we get those facts known from Disney and Lucasfilm, I'm still very dubious that we're ever going to see a trilogy from Rian Johnson, I have to say. But maybe we will. In terms of the episode 9, though, and Rian sort of not being particularly bothered whether JJ retcons The Last Jedi, or parts of The Last Jedi, I have to say with that, it sounds a lot like bravado to me. I mean, what else is Rian Johnson going to say? He's got an interviewer there with a microphone asking him whether he minds that that J.J. Abrams might change parts of The Last Jedi and sort of retcon his film. And if he said anything other than, I'm not particularly bothered, then it would probably create an even bigger story. So I wouldn't necessarily take that all that seriously. But what I think it does show, and it also states it, is that J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson have not communicated particularly about episode 9 in the same way that J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson did not communicate with one another about episode 8. And this is something that I've said a lot about the sequel trilogy, is the fact that the thing is just being made on the fly. There is no overall sort of arching goal within this trilogy of films. That's the primary reason, I think, why this trilogy is such a disaster and such a mess at this point. The directors are coming in and they're just doing whatever they want for their film, particularly Rian Johnson, but also to some degree J.J. Abrams on The Force Awakens, and probably going to get the same in episode 9. So there is no overarching sort of storyline within this. They are not beginning, there's not sort of a beginning, a middle and an end, and a clear sort of goal of what they want to do with this trilogy of films. They don't know where they want to go. They don't know how they're going to get there, because they don't know where they're going. So all we're left with is one film doing one thing, another film doing another thing, and there is just contradicting what's gone before, both in terms of the sequel trilogy, but also, and this is the worst part of it, that these films are also contradicting what has happened in the previous saga. So Rian Johnson is talking about wanting to be surprised, wanting to sit back in the cinema and just be blown away by surprises and see something bold and original. That's fair enough. I want to see something original. I want to see something that's bold, but I don't want that to be at the expense of the previous stories that have gone before, the overall mythology. These films whilst yes, they can work in terms of themselves, so each one of George Lucas's Star Wars films was original to itself. Each one was an original piece of work, but at the same time, they had to complement. They did with George Lucas's 6 films primarily, complement the films that had gone before. With this thing, they are just contradicting what's gone before, particularly Rian Johnson with The Last Jedi. And as I said, it's just no overarching sort of goal within this trilogy. There's no sort of bringing the directors together and trying to sync up the story. And really, this is a lack of leadership from Kathleen Kennedy more than anybody. Kathleen Kennedy is the president of Lucasfilm. It should have been up to her to oversee this project and to make sure that what the directors were doing with these films were not contradicting one another, and to make sure that what the directors were doing in terms of the story that they were trying to tell is going from A to B to C. Now, within that, you can, of course, get diversions. You can go off on various tracks. You don't have to have a totally locked-in story outline for all 3 films, and you can't deviate from that whatsoever. That would be silly to do that. But you do need to know in the first film where you're starting from, why you are starting at that point. You need to know in the second film where you are going from where you started and where you want to end up in the final film. And of course, the final film is the payoff. The final film is the climax. And everything that's happened in the previous 2 films should build up to the third film. This is just by numbers storytelling. And the fact that these people have no general sort of understanding about how to create a consistent story is bewildering. I mean, these are supposed to be professional directors. Kathleen Kennedy has been in the business for like 30, 40 years. What on earth has been going on at Lucasfilm to finish up with this mess? I can't understand it, how this has happened. And as I just keep saying about sequel trilogy, we are where we are, and we just got to see what JJ comes up with episode 9. I haven't got particularly high expectations for episode 9. I just hope that they can wrap the thing up in a reasonable sort of way. Obviously, it can't undo the damage that The Last Jedi did, and it can't undo the damage that The Force Awakens did either. So I just hope we have a reasonably entertaining film and the thing can be wrapped up. But considering what we could have had with the sequel trilogy, it's absolutely bewildering the way that these films have been wasted. I mean, we're up to film number 3 of the sequel trilogy. We know absolutely nothing whatsoever about Rey, the lead character, that Rey's the lead character in these sequel trilogy films. Up to the end of The Last Jedi, we know absolutely nothing about her. Literally nothing, other than she was on Jakku. She found her way to with Finn to Han and Chewie. It set her into an adventure within the battle between the First Order and Princess Leia, or Leia's, General Leia's army. And she finishes up with Luke. She's got to be trained in Force. Luke doesn't want to train. That's all we know about her. We know absolutely nothing whatsoever about this character, and we're up to film number 3. So it's just bewildering that they have made such a mess of this. I think the quote from Rian Johnson saying that he doesn't care if his film is retconned is primarily bravado. There's very little else he could say within that situation, but possibly he doesn't care. I do wonder whether the directors J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson are particularly invested in Star Wars. I wonder whether they are actually Star Wars fans particularly, or whether they're primarily just in it for the money, to be honest, and to particularly for Rian Johnson. J.J. Abrams was already a very established director, but for Rian Johnson, the Star Wars gig, I'm sure, was a big sort of career boost until the backlash occurred anyway. And I just wonder how invested they are in these films. Perhaps they don't care particularly what happens. But what is very, very striking and still blows me away, really, is just the way these films have been created on such a on-the-fly basis, no overall management, no overall story arc. The new characters, Finn, Rey, Poe, there's no sort of background to them. They are extremely derivative characters, almost cardboard cutout, if you like. And that is due to the process of creating these films, the fact that they don't know what story they want to tell. They don't know where they're going with this story, why they're going there, wherever they're going. They're just kind of like wandering around the place trying to come up with some sort of story. But compared to the stories that George Lucas gave us, it is so disappointing what they've done here. And all I'd say is that the thing that I'm looking forward to mostly within the Star Wars universe now is the Benioff and Weiss trilogy from, we think it's going to be from Knights of the Old Republic. But to be honest, whatever era it's set in, I'm still looking forward to that more, because I think those two, if we take the success of Game of Thrones, which I have never seen, but it's a very successful TV series, and obviously they are good storytellers. They know what story they want to tell, and they know how to tell it. That's really what you need first and foremost with any film, but particularly with these Star Wars films that are set within a much broader mythology. So I'm most keen about that, as long as there's not too much involvement from the dreaded Kathy Kennedy and her entourage, as long as they're allowed to go off and create their own story. I've got really strong I've got a really strongly good feeling about the Benioff and Weiss trilogy. I think that could be the thing that really takes Star Wars back to the top. But as far as this sequel trilogy is concerned, it is a mess, it's a disaster, and it's because Rian Johnson gives the game away in this trilogy is because there is no overarching plan or theme or direction or anything particularly about this sequel trilogy at this point. Right, so a bit of a rant. Sorry about that. I hope you didn't find it too irritating. So at 17 minutes, I'm going to sign off there. And please like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to comment, let us know that you're enjoying the Star Wars content. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.